If you've been following AI art generation in recent months, you know that Midjourney 5 has come out. It is now April 2023, and Midjourney 5 has set an entirely new standard for the quality of art that can be generated by Midjourney and by AI art in general. Essentially, they are stock photography quality imagery, but specific to the prompts that you provide and specifically cropped to the size. For example, I have a 3:2 aspect ratio here. You have an enormous degree of control, and at least for the type of non-specific stock photography that I need for a lot of client projects, it is far better than stock photography can offer, and far, far cheaper as well. By non-specific, I mean a photo that you could describe quite simply in a general fashion. It's not of a particular person or a particular place that needs to be precisely represented. If you ask for a photo of, say, Keanu Reeves, which you would need to license, you would want it to be Keanu Reeves or indistinguishable. If you want a photo of the Taj Mahal, it needs to be the Taj Mahal, not a facsimile. So there's a difference between specific stock photography, which you could go capture with a camera yourself, versus general stock photography that tells a story or that offers illustrative purposes for your products and services and your brand. And for that general stock photography, nothing beats what I've been able to build with Midjourney. But what happens when you want to create a particular image and you're having some difficulty creating the exact prompt needed to create the likeness that you're looking for? Now, you could try a bunch of different prompts. You could research how to use prompts, how to use weighting, how to create different styles. You could try setting the seed to different numbers. You can watch a lot of different YouTube videos and learn a lot of different techniques. But there may, in fact, be an easier way. So I'm going to give an example here. Recently, I needed to create an image for a client which included a woman with freckles. And the image looked like this. This is the image that I found that I quite liked. I thought this image looked incredibly realistic, basically a photograph, worked incredibly well for the purposes of a skincare site client. However, to the client actually wanted fewer freckles. Now, as it happens, when I specify freckles in Midjourney version 5, it tends to overemphasize those details. Any detail that you give, it's going to slightly exaggerate it because it wants to make certain that that is a component of the image. It doesn't understand 2 freckles or 5 freckles. It just understands freckles. And this was actually, with the prompt I gave, was a few freckles. So you can see what I mean by the over-exaggeration. Now, I could keep playing with it and try a couple of other variations. I had already generated probably 5 or 6 different variations of this image. But it turns out that there is, in fact, a better way. So let's click into this actual image as it was generated. And you'll notice here at the bottom there is a web button. Now, when I click this web button, opening up that upsized image, it brings it up into a new Midjourney, into the midjourney.com domain rather than the Discord domain. So you'll have to log in, give it a little authorization. But other than that, you should only need to do it once. And from here, you can download your image. And this is normally the way that I would go grab the highest resolution version of the image that I had generated. However, if you scroll down, you'll notice that there are a whole bunch of related images that are provided that were generated by other people on the Midjourney platform. Now, I didn't generate any of these images. I haven't used any of these images. I don't know what prompts and so on were used for any of these images. But I can learn that very easily simply by hovering over any of these image ideas, and I can simply find out every bit of detail that I would want to know about it. Now, you might immediately get excited and think, well, shoot, AI imagery cannot currently be copyrighted. Which means that in an effective sense, all of these images are in the public domain. If no one can copyright them, then they are essentially available for public use. And that may be true from a government copyright law perspective. However, Midjourney's terms of service has some vagaries in this area. Essentially, from what I've explored in Midjourney's terms of service, there are two different licensing models that Midjourney offers. For free plans, you can essentially use any image that you create, but you have to give attribution and you cannot use it for commercial purposes, meaning you can't resell it, you can't print it on a t-shirt that you're selling, those types of things. You can't use it on as part of a product and so on. And you have to give attribution to Midjourney. If you are on a paid plan, at the time you generate an image, then you have the right to use that image commercially in any way you choose. You are considered to own that image, and you do not have to pay any licensing fees to Midjourney and so on with that unlimited use. Even if you cancel your Midjourney plan, those rights are still yours for images you generated with your paid account. But then the question becomes, if Midjourney is assigning that ownership to you, then who owns these? If the images were created, whether they were created by paid accounts or free accounts, which I can't tell, chances are they are considered owned by either Midjourney or by the original author, even though that is probably not easily enforceable in any way. Midjourney itself would have to bring suit to claim some kind of violation, since there's no actual copyright behind it. They'd have to claim it on the basis, as I understand it, and I'm not a lawyer, they'd have to make a claim on the basis of a violation of their terms of service. And I don't know what the reparations would be. I don't know what the consequences would be, but it is something you may be able to completely sidestep and avoid. So let's say we take an image here and we want to look for alternative ways that we can make use of this image. I think this is the one that I was playing with before. No, it's not. It's very similar. Let me come back here and see if I can find the same one that I was looking at earlier. Where is she? They're all lovely and they all look incredibly similar at a glance. That's actually very interesting. I don't think the same image is in this set. So that's all right. Previously, which is even more interesting, it means if I keep hitting refresh, I may get different variations of different images here. But the one that I originally opened over here, and I'm going to stick with that one, and you'll see why in a minute, is this one. This one, I can also save it. I can favorite it. I can see who created it. I can see the exact prompt that was used. I can see it's the four set of variations of images that were created. I could see any exact parameters that were used, any options that were used in the Midjourney command. You could see it used version 4. I can even see if an image was supplied as part of the prompt. I can see that image prompt here. I get all the details on how to create that. So one possibility here to ensure that I am compliant with Midjourney's terms of service is that I simply attempt to recreate a very similar version of this image in one of two different ways. One way is I use the same prompt and I use the same options and I use the same image prompt if there is one, and I attempt to recreate my own version that is close enough that that I like it, but that it works as something that is linked to my own account, and therefore under Midjourney's terms of service I clearly have the right to have unlimited use of. The other possibility is I could use the image itself as a prompt. I could simply grab the URL to it, and I could open that up, and here is the URL to that image, and then I can hand that back into Midjourney, and I could essentially say, create me another image, which is essentially based on this. And I'm gonna try one more variation of that actually. Now I've tried both of these, and we're just about to look at the results. If I go down to the very bottom, I've generated the very, very bottom, and jump to present. Let's try that. Here we go. So now this is rather interesting. Now one of them I created, I took the image and I had to add a word. I'm going to try that one more time here. So I'm going to say imagine. I'm going to give it my image prompt, and I'm going to add, it wants me to add a word, but I don't really want to add a word. And I'm going to do that, and I'm actually going to, I'm going to put a period, and maybe it'll take it. I'm actually going to say also version 4, because it happens that the model that was used originally was a version 4, according to that image prompt that I saw. Yes, version 4. So I want to try to recreate that. It has a slightly more surreal tone to the skin and so on. So we'll go for that. Now, the other variation that I tried here was to simply use the same prompt, and with version 5 in this particular case, and it gave some pretty compelling, similarly images. Now, they're not exact because the seed is different, and I don't know what seed was used. So I could keep trying different variations, but I know that the exact prompt that was used to generate that image was used in these. And if you look at them side by side, what do we get here? You can see there are definitely differences. Now again, this is using version 5. So I'm going to try that one more time. I'm going to try that in version 4 as well. So I'm going to take this and we're going to do it in version 4. So we really want to see what our options are. Imagine minus V4. Tacking a V5 on automatically, that could have consequences. I'd have to change that in my settings somehow. But these are the types of things that you can experiment with. And I would strongly encourage you to attempt to create a version of the image that you like in your own account, simply to make certain that you're 100% covered by Midjourney's terms of service and any possible future changes to copyright law regarding AI art, because this is a gray area. At the end of April 2023, it is in major flux and is being challenged in all kinds of ways. Now, this is pretty good. I like these images. I would have to represent them to my client to say, hey, we can use these ones. What do you think? But this is it's a pretty great way to go to create the different effects even closer to what you're looking for. But that's not all. And if you notice here, when I'm looking at my image page on Midjourney, I scroll down to these images. If I click any one of these images here, I get the image details. But if I scroll down again, I see variations of this image. Now, if you follow this progression, you can keep essentially clicking in closer and closer and closer to the exact type of image you're looking for until you actually bang on get a prompt and imagery. It's like the world's largest stock photography website on steroids. It's an amazing experience to simply be able to navigate and say, oh, actually, I like this direction of art. What happens if I go in this direction? And now I'm seeing more and more variations in that direction. And yet there is still more. Now, this really blew my mind. One of the things I noticed was that in this Explore Related section on every one of these pages, there is a Search More button. If I click the Search More button, you'll notice that I end up with a similar page with perhaps slightly more items. I can keep expanding it. I can keep going, go further and further. But at the very top, there is a URL. Now, that URL can actually be any URL on the internet. So essentially what I think Midjourney 5 is doing here is taking the image URL that you provide and running its new describe capability, which takes an image and converts it to a prompt. Then it's turning around and taking that prompt and turning it into additional images. But it's doing a kind of vector matching to find similar images. So rather than actually having to recreate images, it is finding all the other images that are already similar to it. So let's try a wacky experiment. Here I've just gone to the internet, I've gone to Google Images, I've done a wild search for some doctors in a surgery room. And you can see this is a stock photography item by Alamy in this particular case, and the URL and so on in the image and so on. It doesn't have to be high resolution, but it happens to be a pretty good image. You can see it's got the watermarks all over it. If I wanted to buy this, I could, but what can Midjourney do to give me a similar photo that I can simply use? So I'm simply going to copy that URL, and I'm going to paste it into this upper bar. And I'm going to have it do a search. Now, I haven't tried this before, with this image, but it has done a pretty darn good job. Now, straight away, you can see quite a few images. They all tend to have 2 doctors or 2 surgeons in the operating room theater. Just for reference again, what you're seeing here, a bit of equipment. I'm seeing some really good images here. Here it shows me close-up details, and again, I can go through the same process. What if I want something a little bit different? How do I keep traveling down this direction of finding something very specific that I'm looking for? And you can see again, I've got a prompt and I've got my options. And in this case, I've got an image prompt as well that was provided. So this had an original image. If I open this image in a new tab, this is the image that was originally provided as something that the original creator of this image with Midjourney used as a basis. Although they changed it to Japanese, which is quite interesting. It's very exciting what you can do with AI artwork. You can get so specific and you can give it such a clear starting point to work with. So I run into the same situation that I probably don't want to use this exact image because, again, gray area. So I would go back and I would copy this prompt and I would use the same attributes and I would use the same image prompt and I would see what can I create in my own account that I definitely have covered by Midjourney's terms of service and by future copyright law, if anything should change. But let's go have a look at how our experiment worked out. Now, I've generated 2 versions, one which was based on the actual image. It has done pretty well. Not bad. I'm not a big fan of that one. I don't know what the shark is about. These are pretty good. Again, Midjourney version 4, I'm pretty sure it did actually pick up the version 4 model instruction. You could see the slightly airy, slightly surreal, less photographic look. And then here we've got another one. This doesn't quite look like freckles. It looks a little bit more like a kind of a skin condition of some form. But you have all these different options to work with. Now, if I go into this second one, which was based on the prompt, based on the version number, I got these. And again, if I run it again, I'm going to get more variations. Run it again, I'm going to get more variations. These are pretty good. They definitely have the green eyes. They definitely have the version 4 look of being not quite photographic. It picked up details amazingly well. It definitely picked up the freckles and the red hair and the style of red hair even. It has done an amazing job, and even amazing texturing on the fabrics here. I'm just so impressed with what can be done. So what does this mean? Essentially, it means that for all intents and purposes, if you can find any public stock photography companies, you should probably short their stock. There is a very likely going to be no future in stock photography when it comes to general stock photography imagery that describes not a specific person or a specific place, but a concept, a scene, an event. And all of that will be created by artificial intelligence. And Midjourney is just one of the platforms out there. If you're watching recently, at the end of April again, Stable Diffusion is taking off. There are quite a few other images. Adobe has its own with Firefly. You can create tons and tons of stuff. And it is faster to create your own than it is to even search for an image in a typical stock photography library. It is amazingly powerful. The big gray area here is the ability to protect the work that you're generating. Now, the fact that it is so cheap, and if you're using it for website purposes, brochures, blogs, product catalogs, then that is great. If you're trying to create something that you own exclusive copyright to, that you can put on a book cover and prevent anyone else from copying something too similar, or that you want to print on a t-shirt or a coffee mug, or you want to do something where no one else can replicate that exactly the same way. If you want copyright protection, this is not the way to go. But if you are looking for quick, fast, precise image generation with an infinite amount of variety, Midjourney is the best option out there.